Hey guys, welcome to the first of my yearly end of the year wrap up style videos. This video is going to be going over all of the books I read in 2024, or 2025 rather. Jesus, it's been a long year. It's going to be going over all the books I read in 2025. As you can see though, it's not a very large stack this year. I'm going to talk a little bit more about, kind of why I've been a little bit lacking this year, tomorrow's video. But suffice to say, I was pretty stressed. I had a lot of stuff going on this year. And before we dive into this, I do want to once again give another shout out. I did write a book this year. If you want to get your own copy of it, the link will be down in the description below. It is the story of a young man who becomes immortal in a world where all of the gods exist, which is a violation of the law. But the bigger concern for the gods is that none of them can detect him with their magic. If that sounds interesting to you, like I said, the first book is done. You can find a link in the description below. And that's about all I got to say on that part. So let's dive into the books I read this year, starting with the actual books I read. First one, The Dosadi Experiment by Frank Herbert. I honestly don't like to say that I didn't enjoy this book, because there was just nothing about this book that reached out and grabbed me the way that some books tend to do. It sucks because this is the guy who wrote Dune, and I want to get to reading the Dune series at some point, but this just doesn't feel like maybe the best introduction to his body of work that I could have started. It's basically like this alien species and humans have put a bunch of people on Earth, or on a isolated planet, to shoved all into one big city like New York, and basically just kind of left it a lawless wasteland. And it's an interesting book. It doesn't really get to the sci-fi element of what the experiment actually is until later, where it's revealed that all of these beings are being used to basically act as a body swap farm, where certain higher-ups and elites will put their brains into another body to continue living. That's not until like almost the end of the book it's explained. There's a lot of heavy political intrigue in this book, which is pretty cool. If you watch my Dresden File ranking from the other day, you know that I actually do like political intrigue style stuff like that. It's just that unfortunately there was nothing in this book that immediately sucked me into it. Apparently it is a sequel, so maybe if I had read the first one first, I would have had a little bit of a better time diving into it better. But sometimes you shouldn't have to read the entire series to enjoy a book. So, I don't know. This book, it just was not for me. The next one I read, however, was called A God in the Shed by J.F. Dubois, I believe is how it's pronounced. And this one was actually really engrossing. It's a very interesting story about a girl who accidentally captures like some sort of paranormal god entity being in her shed, because the god is bound by the rules of a game it played at one point in the past, where if something's looking at it, it cannot move. Or it cannot leave like the line of sight, I believe is how it's worded. And it's really interesting. It's basically about how this small town is kind of like, there's a cult in it that has been looking for this god. There's people that want to kill this god. There's people that want to control this god. It's a lot of different elements that all come together surprisingly well. This is a really engrossing read. It does have a sequel. I want to get the sequel at some point this year and read it so I can talk about it a little bit more next year. It uses multiple perspectives. It swaps between characters a whole lot. And I honestly found this to just be really enjoyable to read. I blew through it in like a month. So, yeah, it was really good. I guess I'll give a quick update as well. I have been reading the Wheel of Time series that I said I was going to do last year. I'm about halfway through the second book. They are huge, chunky books. Like, the first book is like 800 something pages. It's honestly pretty wild. Moving on to the couple graphic novels I read this year. The first one was actually the Gravity Falls, the Book of Bill. I got the Barnes & Noble exclusive version, which comes with like additional pages that are just ripped straight out of, I believe it is what, The Great Gatsby. This was interesting. I like that they're still doing more stuff with Gravity Falls. Obviously, it's one of the best cartoons from the 2010s. I would hope it's still getting some love. And I do believe that this basically just deconfirms the entire fan theory about Stan being Bill from, like, reincarnation or whatever. So that is a little bit sucky, because I did like that theory a lot. But honestly, this dives more into Bill. It doesn't give us everything, but it does humanize him a little bit. There's points in the book where it seems like he's actually showing remorse or feels some sort of regret for the actions he does. And it ends with him in therapy, which is so funny. That is straight up, like, out of the show levels of comedy. It's really good. So yeah, definitely check this out if you're a fan of Gravity Falls, and you haven't for some reason. It came out last year. It blew up on the Gravity Falls fan base from what I saw. So for whatever reason you haven't read this, you should definitely check it out. The next one I read was Mr. Ballen Presents Strange, Dark, and Mysterious, the Graphic Stories. This is basically a compilation story book, graphic novel of different weird encounters and stuff that people have had. Some of these I was familiar with going into it, like, hang on, let me go to the table of contents here. The Beast of Gévaudan, I feel like a lot of people should know. It's the story of that French village that was attacked by a demon werewolf or something, but probably was actually just like a family of dogs or family of wolves. What is it? How's that pronounced? Kandahar Giant. That's another one that I'm familiar with. It doesn't seem like it's widely talked about too much on the internet, but it's a story of, like, soldiers in Afghanistan who encounter some sort of giant red-headed man in the mountains of Kandahar in Afghanistan, I believe it is. So this was interesting. I always like reading real paranormal stories or stuff like that. So if you have any interest in that kind of stuff, I'd recommend checking this out, or like some other books and stuff that cover this kind of topic, because it is always pretty interesting. I hate how kind of modernized our world has become, to the point where we know everything about almost everything. So a lot of the mystery and intrigue of the paranormal and the mysterious has kind of gone out the window. So stories like this tend to just kind of pull me back into that a little bit. And then the last one I read this year was TMNT The Last Ronin Lost Years. This was interesting. It bridged the gap from where we in The Last Ronin, when all of Mikey's family dies, to how he basically becomes the last Ronin. There's certain elements of it that I think are weird, like the entire point of the book when he loses his eyesight, I think was kind of out of nowhere, because he just kind of gets it back later. I understand the point was to make him a little bit more reliant on his other senses and stuff. It shows you how he gets his tonfas, which was really cool. I kind of agree with a lot of the other people in the TMNT community. The Last Ronin didn't really need expansions the way that they've been doing it, because you've got this one and you've got The Last Ronin Re-Evolution, which I'm also in the process of reading as well. And it just feels kind of unnecessary. The Last Ronin was so well received and so fantastic because it stood on the back of the Turtles' history and stood pretty well on its own as well. So I don't think that these expansions are really necessary or really needed, but I'm also happy they're here because it is a fantastic series. The Last Ronin is one of the best stories of the Ninja Turtles, so I'm happy it's still getting love in 2025 and 2024, whenever these ones came out. So yeah, that's unfortunately all I've got for today for my books I read this year. If you want to get a copy of my personal book, links in the description below. What books have you guys read this year? What recommendations do you have for me next year? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with our final year-end wrap-up. Peace.